This is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint. Now, your host, James Just.
Richard Fields here, sitting in for James on Libertarian Counterpoint. Welcome to the show. Welcome Charles Strange to the show, our special guest, along with regular panelist John Cameron. Charles, you have a story to tell about your son, who was, as I understand it, on the SEAL team that killed Osama bin Laden. Tell the story.
Yes, my name is Charles Strange, Gold Star father of Petty Officer First Class Michael Strange. Killed in action August 6, 2011, along with 29 other brave Americans and 8 Afghans in a Chinook helicopter in Afghanistan in the Tanjin Valley. It was the biggest loss of life in Iraq and Afghanistan, 30 men, and it was the biggest loss of life in the history of America, 22 guys from Navy Dev Group, Navy Special Warfare. Michael called me April about 14th, 2011, before they were going in to kill Osama bin Laden. He said, "Dad, everything's getting shut down. You won't hear from me for 2 weeks." And I was, "What's going on? What's going on?" He's like, no. And he couldn't talk. And he said, "If something happens, you'll hear about it, Dad." And May 1st, the killing of Osama bin Laden, and he came home in June. And it was his birthday, 2011. He was 25. He was born June 6th, D-Day. And we had a big party for him and a bunch of his friends. And but he was different. After he came home from that raid, he grabbed me by the bicep. He said, "Dad, you wouldn't believe what's going on in this country." Right up in my face. I'm like, "What's the matter, Michael?" And he started pacing, walking back and forth. And he started talking about a will. So I'm like, "What are you talking about a will for?" And he told his mother, his sisters, friends at the party, Aunt Maggie stopped there, and it was different. And a few of the other men on that Chinook Extortion 17 also did the same thing. Set up a will. One guy put it in the freezer. One guy brought his grandparents down, his kids, his wife. They all lived down there in Virginia, down by Dam Neck, Little Creek, and they knew something was going on. And so why would our own government kill our own guys, right? That's, this guy's a conspiracy guy, da-da-da-da-da. And I believe that all the corruption that's going on in Washington, D.C., with these congressmen and these senators, and so the people all the way up to the top, I believe being in Afghanistan for 20 years, a country that's a little bit bigger than Texas, with the most powerful military in the world. If nobody don't see something wrong here, there's something wrong. Look at poor Pat Tillman. We talked to Pat Tillman's parents, the lies keep coming. And October 2011, we went down for the briefing, all 60 parents. And while we're down there, bring them there. Jeffrey Colt did the investigation in 2 weeks. Did an investigation in 2 weeks in Afghanistan, about 30 men that died. And so he's telling us what happened. We're in this theater down in Virginia Beach and down by Dam Neck, all 60 parents. And he's going over the pilots. And we get it, God bless him, I know him. But the one pilot, he never flew in Afghanistan. He had thousands of hours, but he flew in Iraq. And the other pilot was a new pilot, God bless him, And then he went into saying that, the Taliban in the Tanjin Valley, and it was an RPG shot, 100 yards in the pitch black. And it was a lucky shot. I stood up. I said, "Lucky shot? All our sons are dead. What's wrong with you? We're playing basketball here or football? Lucky shot." And a couple SEALs, calm down. There's something wrong here. And I asked him, "What happened to the black box, which is really orange?" And he went, "A flash flood came and washed it away. We even sent in extra men. We thought we heard the beeper." And there was controversy about the black box. They didn't have them in the 1963 CH-47Ds. Some people say, but it was refurbished in 1984, that Chinook. So there was some kind of recording device in there. And at the end of Jeffrey Colt, telling us what happened and the investigation and all, they handed us a folder. And in that folder, there was 25 pages and a disc. So I get home and, you're out of your mind. You buried your son. It was just sitting next to you. It's the worst thing in the world to bury a child, no matter how you lose a child, And I open up the 25 pages and you can read the first page, you can read the second page, but the rest of the page, there's no ink, there's no toner. You can't read it. I called up Admiral Sean Pybus. He was Commander-in-Chief of CENTCOM. I said, Sean, I got a bad copy here. I can't read this. And he said, well, Charlie, I got a lot of complaints about that. I said, all right, send me another one, Sean. He said, I can't. We burned it. I said, you burned it? 2 months later, you burned all the paperwork about what happened to my son and these men? So I hang up with him, and that disc, you put the disc in, and all these little blocks pop up, like 200 little blocks. And my wife gets on the computer. After about 7 hours, she finds out if you click, 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 and then click, 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 1,364 pages came out. And it talks about how the Taliban knew. The Taliban knew exactly what they were doing. They were under the trees, Mr. Fields. They were on the roof. There were 6 IEDs planted around the landing site and going to the landing site. The 1,364 pages is in my new book, Relentless. I just finished the book, and it's documented. It's what they gave me, So we fought tooth and nail trying to get a congressional hearing, trying to get some answers. We've had 40 of the parents come write in questions. We had a national press club in Washington, D.C. We had Alan West, General Boykin, General Valet, Navy SEAL Ben Smith, 17 of the Gold Star parents. It was filled with cameras. Nobody played it. Nobody in the media played it? Nobody in the media played it.
Hey, Dan, can I ask you a couple of questions? Do you mind?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't, if you were, I didn't, if Richard, you're moderating this, if you want to go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my heart goes out to you for the loss of your son. I only have one child. She's, my daughter. She has enough personalities to where it's like having a bunch of kids, but no, she's a piece of work, but the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. So I cannot comprehend that loss. And, that's the one loss that a lot of people just don't come back from. You can lose your spouse, you can lose your job, you can lose your limbs, but the loss of a child is brutal. So my heart goes out to you. How many of the SEAL team that were part of the killing of Osama bin Laden were on that Chinook? Was it just your son, or is that entire team was on there, or how many of the people that were actually involved in the bin Laden project were on that same Chinook with him?
I know of 3.
And how many were on the team?
That took out bin Laden? 3 that got killed with my son.
So that's
that I know of.
I'm sorry, there were on the entire bin Laden team, how many people?
3 that I know of.
And all 3 got killed?
Yes.
So how many total people were involved in killing bin Laden? How many SEALs were involved in that action? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not positive on that now. I know the Chinook. I know when they were going into the compound to kill Osama bin Laden. The guy hanging out the side of the helicopter was my son Michael.
Yeah.
I was at a dinner in Virginia, and 2 members of SEAL Team 6 pulled me out. I was tapped on the shoulder by a 2-star admiral. Some men from SEAL Team 6 want to talk to you. And there's been different ones. And actually, my son would never talk. The code, he was a cryptologist. He was a code breaker. He was the best in the world. I'm not saying that because he was my son. They gave him the National Intelligence Medal of Valor. Only 17 have ever been given out in the history of America since World War II and the Windtalkers. And we're in Dover, August 2011, and you're out of your mind. We're in a hangar, and Barack Hussein Obama came up to me. He sidestepped me in. He grabbed me by the shoulders. He said, "Michael changed the way America lived. Michael could do this, and Michael could do that." And I was like, I grabbed President Obama by the shoulder. I said, "I don't need to know about my son. I need to know what happened." And they said, "Well, like this, the Secret Service guys grabbed me." And then I went outside, had a water, and came back. And he gave me another hug. I said, "Is there going to be a congressional hearing about this?" And he went, "We're going to look into this very, very, very deep," 3 times. And that was it. We tried. We've been in Washington, D.C. 30 times. Numerous parents. Alan West, with the National Press Club. Jason Chaffetz, Congressman Chaffetz out of Utah. He had, we were there. He was going to have a congressional hearing for us. And then they called it Honoring, Remembering the 30 Americans and Bart the Warrior Dog. And he was killed with them too. And that's when we had 42 parents wrote in questions to Jason Chaffetz. And I'm like, all right, somebody has to be held accountable. We know it wasn't a lucky shot. And 3 weeks before the hearing, they said, all the parents can ask questions except for you, Mr. Strange, in the Rayburn building. And me, we had Larry Klayman helping us at the time, the lawyer, Larry Klayman. And the parent, what do you buy? Well, everybody except me. And then 2 weeks before the hearing, none of the parents could ask any questions. Congress is going to ask the questions. And it was on C-SPAN 3. You can look at, I think it's still up, C-SPAN 3. And Gary Reed came and represented the military. He was the right-hand man to Chuck Hagel. And my son, they said that my son was burned beyond recognition. There was only 38 skulls and 38 C-spines. Once it says it right here, Pentagon spokesman Navy Captain Jane Campbell said that in a statement, because the remains are unbearable to see at this point, next of kin are not in a position to grant approval for media access or to dignify the transfer. So they said 38 skulls, 38 C-spines, and my son wasn't burned at all. I got autopsy pictures a few months later from Dover. He was like this with holding the gun, not burned at all. His ankle was almost over. So Jason Chaffetz brings Gary Reed in and these other people for the hearing. It wasn't no congressional hearing. I don't even like saying that. To honor and remember. And none of the questions the 42 parents wrote in, except for one guy from Florida named Mr. Micah. He's the only one that read the questions, and he blasted them. And I think the other people who were there, they didn't even know about Extortion 17. Why would you send somebody that knows? And we never got a congressional hearing. We never had anybody held accountable, and that's why I'm on here today. I can't thank you guys enough, Mr. Fields. Let people know Extortion 17 should roll off the tongues of the American people. 30 guys died. It's in Afghanistan, 93 days after the Bin Laden raid. And I have the paperwork right here from the 1,300 pages. Tell me we're under trees there. In the investigation, the 3 eyes in the sky, the sensors, Jeffrey Colt that did the investigation, they all had a glitch on them at the same time.
Okay. Charles, okay, question. You said, do you mind if I ask you some more questions?
Please.
So you're saying that we know that corruption was rampant in Afghanistan. It's just, it was a money pit, it was a people pit, it was a time pit. It was poorly managed and run from start to finish. So your own investigation says, or you have sources that say that the Chinook when it landed, this LZ was prepared ahead of time by these people with IEDs, and that was the Chinook supposedly hit while it was in the air or on the ground?
In the air.
in the air with a standard RPG, not a guided weapon, just a regular dumb RPG.
100 yards in the pitch dark RPG. So I was thinking what you're thinking was a man pad.
Yeah, but
Heat
they
seeking
said
missile.
RPG.
Yes.
Yeah, because the man pads, they're deadly. I can understand, that supposedly it's the best infantry carry, anti-aircraft, anti-helicopter weapon in the world. So I can understand that. RPG, I've seen some lucky things, some unlucky things. I wouldn't call it lucky shot. That's a bad choice of words for somebody to say lucky shot. Maybe a 1 in a 10 million shot, but you don't ever use the word lucky when you're talking about losing all those lives. So you're convinced from your own investigation or for a government report or from what convinces you that when that Chinook landed, that where did you get the facts? Is it from your research? Is it from a report after incident report? How do you know that they knew they were coming? What leads you to that?
I'm 100% sure the disc that they gave us, and we printed out the 1,364 pages.
Yeah.
Some of the parents said they were going to ask for the disc back.
Yeah.
Then I'm thinking, no offense to anybody, but a lot of them 3-star, 4-star admirals and generals are a little pompous. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody will ever figure out how to. They will. I'm only a construction worker. My wife works for AAA. Plus you're out of your mind. You just lost your son or daughter. They're not going to. Once they figure it out, they're just going to give up. But we're from Philadelphia. We don't give up. And now when my son died, and there's questions in these 1,364 pages. The 3 eyes in the sky's going out. The sensors had a glitch. It's in there. 6 IEDs on the way. Here's the biggest one. In Afghanistan, the Tanzine Valley, everybody's got a fire pit out, right? There's always fires going on. That night, no fires. Not only Taliban, Khorasan, everybody knew. Qari Tahir, who the high-value target they said they were after, he knew. It's in the 1,300 pages. He moved from village to village. The Taliban's names are in there. I'm begging you. Can you get us some help to get a real hearing? Mm-hmm. Anybody out there, any one of your contacts for the Gold Star families. Mm-hmm. This is, we need some closure.
Well, we've been doing this show, Libertarian Counterpoint, for some 30 years, and so far we have not had a whole lot of response to the viewpoints that we put out in official circles. And I think it's probably lucky that we're still on the air, if anything. So I don't know how much help we'll be able to get you. Certainly, some of our viewers may be in positions of influence where they can get you a little bit of closure, a little bit more help. But as far as the influence of this show, I'm afraid that I have to be humble about that. The questions that the things that your son suspected, when he said, "Dad, you won't believe what's going on in this country." Do you have any idea what specifically he was talking about?
No, he kept it close to the vest, Mr. Fields. He kept it close to the vest. And the reason for that was they would give him a lie detector test every 2 or 3 months, them guys at that level. Mm. And the first question they asked, when was the last time you lied? No. A loaded question. No. And I went to dinner with my son down in Virginia by the secret base when he bought his home and all. And we're at P.F. Chang's eating dinner. I'm trying to get information out of him. And he said, "Dad, you know who's sitting next to us?" I said, "Looks like a husband and wife." He said, "That's what you think." I was like, "Michael, what do you do?" I wanted him to do the 4 years and get out, and he took off and he loved what he did. He loved what he did. But what he seen and what was going on here in our country, as you can see now, there's some bad stuff happening here, man. Taking down statues, changing our kids' teaching. I have granddaughters. We have 7 grandchildren, the money. And the other thing is 20 years in Afghanistan? Are you kidding me? Have you ever looked at how much poppy we used to get for morphine before we started? It was like 5% we would get from there. You know what it's at now? It's like 88% America gets. We don't have that many people on morphine. You know what I mean? Look at the contractors that were there, like Halliburton.
Well, you know, I've long maintained that the purpose of the Afghanistan war was not to create a democracy in Afghanistan or to protect us from terrorism or any of the standard excuses. The excuse or the reason for the war was to keep the military-industrial complex fat and happy. And same thing with Iraq and Somalia, for that matter, and Syria, which is still an ongoing thing, and Libya, and all of the rest of the brushfire wars we've been involved in ever since since Vietnam, and certainly since the Clinton administration. I mean, once we defeated in effect the Soviet Union, there was nothing left for us to do so militarily because we had no enemies. There was no reason for a multi-trillion-dollar or billion-dollar military to exist anymore. So they had to invent reasons for it to exist, and all of the wars that we've had since then are those reasons. And I suspect perhaps your son was onto that. Your son had figured out at the light that he'd seen enough inside information, seen enough going on from the inside, was in a position where he couldn't talk about it, and knew that hey, there's problems. I guess the question I have is why, since he obviously did not share any of that information with anybody he wasn't supposed to, why would he be targeted along with other folks to die in that helicopter crash?
I believe that quite a few of them were ready to speak out. I truly believe they were ready to speak out and talk about all the corruption going on from the highest level. It says in the 1,364 pages, General Colt, when he's asking, well, how high did this go? And the guy goes, over Petraeus? Yeah. Guess who else's name's in there? Leon Panetta, Leon the Snake Panetta, his name's in there, who exposed after they killed bin Laden. He took what? I don't know, 700 people from Hollywood down there to do Zero Dark 30. You know what he said? Oh, I thought they had clearance. How about Joe Biden 3 days after the bin Laden raid at the Ritz-Carlton in Delaware, which has been published? SEAL Team 6 killed bin Laden. SEAL Team 6 killed bin Laden. Anybody he could talk to. Robert Gates was Secretary of Defense. He said, yo, what are you doing? Yo, the military. Another coincidence, then 93 days later, all these men get killed? There's something wrong.
Charles, got another question for you. What have your son, and again, my heart goes out to you, and three of his mates, and I'm in the military, or not now. Obviously, I'm too old to do that stuff anymore. If they paid me, they couldn't pay me enough. So here's my question. There's 4 guys that were on this raid. You don't know the total number of guys that were on the raid because your son didn't talk about it. It's probably classified. But you've got 1,364 pages of information. I'm kind of surprised that they gave you that much information. But that's not my question. This is my question. Since you don't know how many people were in the op that basically, assassinated bin Laden and brought his body out. Is there any way anybody could tell if the other people who are on that op have also met their end in suspicious ways? Since it's impossible to identify the people that are on the op, I don't think there's, if I were to go to Google or DuckDuckGo preferably, because I know where Google would send me, right where Google wants me to go, and search, I don't think there'd be a list of, petty officers.
Who was on that SEAL team?
Who was on that team. So that's a question I'd really like answered at some point, and I don't know how. Because even if you did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, this stuff is all classified. The government classifies, how much toilet paper it uses if it chooses to do so. And a real smart lawyer that I know, when I was talking about government conspiracies, that they're too stupid to actually have a conspiracy, and he said, well, that's before the fact. They're very good at hiding stuff after the fact. He asked me a question. He said, how many of those FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, which I'm sure your attorneys put in records, are ever completely responded to? And I said, none? You'd be absolutely right. So just because you ask for it, and just because there's a legal document saying you must respond to this, doesn't mean they're going to give you the whole answer. But I'd sure love to find out. And I don't think I cannot conceive of a way to find out who else was on that mission with your son, and if they're still alive. That would be a question. I don't know how you'd ask it. And I got one kind of closing question for you, and it's a little off subject, but hopefully I can ask it. Neither Richard nor I are big fans of wars. I'm very patriotic, but I'm not a fan of us deciding that we can go change what's going on in the rest of the world by throwing the blood of American boys and girls on the ground. I don't think that's a good way to change things. But with the debacle of the 20 years of Afghanistan, and then leaving in a matter of days, and leaving all those people in the lurch and everything, what do the other SEAL and the other officers and the other men and women that you've talked to that might have served with you, that you might have reported to you, what do they think? What do they think?
Well, the C-130 that was above the Chinook helicopter, her name is Joni, Joni Marquez.
Yeah.
She came out and spoke. She was on quite a few stations, news stations. I've talked to Joni. Remember, I told her my son wasn't burned. She watched my son die. My son was alive for like 15, 20 minutes with a gun in his hand. He took 3 bullets. They tried to say the cook-off rounds. Cook-off round can't go through and kill you, And she was threatened to lose her pension from the military, jail. She went to a few congressmen and senators in Washington, D.C. You can Google her. She's out there, Joni Marquez. God bless her. She asked to open up fire 7 times and got denied.
Wow. We're out of time. But Charles, we thank you very much for being part of the show. And if you have, if you in your quest for justice and truth find out anything else, let us know and let everybody know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles, my heart goes out to you as a father